So total spots in Motorgate, just over 1,400. These are the current totals that we have per category for those that park in Motorgate. So residents have the highest category of just about 800, non-residents around 38, seniors 227, disabled 90, motorcycle 7, and then we included all the employees that work on the island that also park in that area as well. So employees of RIOC, a little over 100, the post office, Manhattan Park, employees of the island, a little over 100 there as well, and then the tram and SP Plus. So this was our comparison that we put together. So we took 2 parking garages on the Upper East Side as well as 1 in Astoria. So these are the daily rate comparisons. So Motorgate is in the second column there. So up to an hour, it's $9, and then you look across the chart, the parking structure, 202 East 67th Street in Manhattan, a little over $21. East 74th Street between 1st and 2nd, approximately 22, and then in Astoria, much less, around $5. So we just did a comparison overall to get a better snapshot of what the daily rates are to see how Motorgate measures up to this. So overall, in comparison to the structures in Manhattan, obviously we're cheaper than that, but then in relation to Astoria, we're a little bit more expensive in some areas and then right in line in some others. Oh, I did want to mention in that last slide, you don't have to go back, but they also, most parking garages do charge an extra fee for SUVs that park in their structure, where Motorgate, it's just one rate for the vehicle itself. So we continued the comparison to look at the monthly parking rates for each of the structures, as well as comparing our resident and non-resident rates to see how they stack up. So our resident monthly rates sitting at, whether you're a regular parking spot area or a reserve rate, anywhere from $220 to just about $264. Non-residents upwards of $350 to $388. So in comparison to the parking structures on the Upper East Side, they've really doubled that basically for those parking areas. And then in Astoria, a little bit more in line, more with the non-resident rate that we have. Monthly SUV rate. The resident and non-resident rates for Motorgate stay the same, where at the other parking facilities they go up pretty substantially. Same thing, they have oversized charges as well, and then we included motorcycles since we do allow parking for those within the Motorgate structure. Some of the parking garages just do not allow permitting for that at all. Motorgate occupancy, so we asked SP Plus to do an analysis to find out when the Motorgate has the most amount of vehicles in it. So they looked at Motorgate at 12 p.m. and then at 2 a.m. to really better understand the occupancy within the structure. So at 12 p.m., most of the occupancy is just around 70%, so we have about 30% availability, and then when it gets to 2 a.m., that rises up to about 80% full, and then about 20% of free space. So really during the day, we do have more flexibility, more open spots in the area where it's, as you can tell from slide 1, most of the people that are parking in the area, over 800 residents, have parking spaces. So overnight is obviously going to be more crowded than during the day. And then lastly, we get a lot of questions about the wait list procedures. So currently there's 438 people on the wait list. Parking availability for those to come off the wait list is dependent on monthly cancellations. So usually from month to month we get anywhere from 30 to 50 residents that cancel their parking reservation within Motorgate, and then from that list SP Plus will go through starting at whoever's next and calling them to see if they would like to get a parking spot within Motorgate. Residents are contacted in the order that they were placed on the list. Currently, the resident that has been on the list the longest is from April 2022, so just about 2 years on that waiting list. And then we also provided the materials that are required in order to become a parking permit or have a parking permit within Motorgate. So proof of residency, driver's license, vehicle registration, all of this needs to be in line with a residential building on the island. If the person is unable to present that material, then they would be still able to get a permit there, but it would be at a non-resident rate.
Are there any questions?
One of my favorite subjects, what we pay for on this island. I see the comparison to Manhattan. My question is, how many of those people that park there paid $10 million to fix the parking garage that they're in? So they've already paid for a lot more. You can say they pay in their taxes. Okay, we're taxed double here. We pay real estate taxes on land we don't own, then we pay ground rent on top of that, and I just did a comparison that said most of the people in Manhattan pay between 40 and 55% of their monthly rent or maintenance for taxes. We paid 70. So we're already paying 15 or 20% more in taxes, and we have to pay for the repair work on this kind of stuff. So how can we even say we can compare it to what they're paying in Manhattan? What are we getting for free?
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback on that. So first I want to just ask a question. Is there still a plan to raise prices next month or the 1st of April? Or?
So yeah, there is. What was announced, over a year ago now, right? And it was a 2-phase increase. There were certain categories that were going to go from zero, that were going to increase from zero. In particular, the disabled rate was originally planned to go from 0 to $62.50, which is what it's currently at, and then to increase again from $62.50 to $125 per month. So that we are not going to implement with respect to the disabled rate. In order to make this revenue neutral, and what was announced previously was a 2% increase, say, for the resident rate. In order to keep this revenue neutral, that'll have to be a little bit higher, not drastically. I think what we've landed on is 3%, yes. Oh, thank you. So for the resident rate, we anticipate, and again, these changes are set to take effect May 1st, I believe.
Correct.
So the proposed rate for residents is going to, that 3% increase is $6.59, and so the increase will go to $226.19 per month.
Okay, thank you. So that sounds a lot more reasonable that we're not raising the disabled and seniors, and I'm actually quite happy about that. So let me move on to.
Look at the overall picture.
Right.
So each month, if we were to raise the rates, we would increase revenue about $12,000. So annually, it would be $150,000.
Right. So I want to follow up. So now you showed us how much, and it's actually a really good question of like non-residents, how much should they pay? Is it Manhattan rate? Is it Queens rate? Is there somewhere in between? I don't think many of us have an objection for the non-residents rate to go up if you feel that it's necessary. So I leave that to you guys. If you feel that it's not a fair rate, then come with the rate that's a market rate that's more fair. And I'm kind of happy to hear that we're not adding more people who are not residents. We're keeping all of the future seats for residents. But before I go to more of my specific questions, I understand that we're at 80% capacity. Is there any reason why we can't increase the allocation for reservations and just add another 100 cars? Or what is the theory behind not adding another 100 spots for residents?
I think it's about demand, right? If everybody chooses to
Well,
park there at the same
there's
time.
438 people that are on wait list and 20% of the...
No, demand for usage at any given time, like people who already have a permit.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a question for the public as well, is when you go on a plane, you know that usually airlines book 105% of the seats because they assume that 5 people won't make it. And instead of us assuming that everyone will have parking, why don't we add another 100 cars, which means that maybe someone will come in the middle of the night and they won't have a place to park, which I don't know if that's the right solution or not, but It definitely sounds terrible if we are at 80% capacity every night or most nights, just because we're afraid that maybe someone will come and they won't have a parking spot. Just a thought.
So if I might, I know that, so, and just so people understand too, right, Motorgate was built in 2 phases. First phase by Roosevelt itself, by RIOC or UDC. And then the second phase was built by Manhattan Park, when Manhattan Park was constructed. And so the facility is jointly owned, and we have a contract then with a management company, SP Plus, who manages it. And I know that the folks at Manhattan Park reached out to us seeking to maybe RFP that contract again with SP Plus. So that's a distinct possibility, and I think that would be the forum for some of these things to be worked out, because there is this contract.
And I appreciate that, but that wasn't my question. I think it's a great idea to add more parking, but my question is, if our survey shows that we usually have only 80% of the spots taken, why not increase the spots and put a disclaimer when you buy your token telling you, hey, you might come one night and you won't have a spot, just like airlines do, and maybe we give them a free parking spot somewhere else, or airlines will give you $20 if you come and you don't have a parking spot. Can we come up with a creative solution that we can solve maybe in the next week and reduce our 400 people wait list to 300?
So, can I just, I'm definitely not opposed to that idea. I'm also not at all an expert in this, and that would be the kind of thing that we would be looking to SP Plus for their opinion about. They're a nationally traded company, publicly traded company, and they run parking garages all over the United States. So they're the experts to talk to about this.
Right, so I agree that we should look and see what the capacity, the working capacity that needs to be maintained. Right now, it appears to be running between 80 and 70%.
Right.
Utilization, maybe we plan to be 85, 90%.
And part of
but the experts, who know the business, can explain it to us. But imagine how it will be the time that a senior comes back and cannot find parking. And a disabled person cannot find parking that they should ordinarily feel that they can expect.
Or anybody for that matter who's paid for it. I mean, that's part of the.
No, but that's part of it. Just like when you go on an airline, sometimes they're out of seats. There's ways to solve it instead of saying
Yeah, I
it's
think
not.
we need to enforce the usage of the
Exactly.
spots.
And to your point, if someone's disabled, maybe we make sure that we don't take away the disabled spots, right?
But they're not taken away, it's just.
They're not spots that are marked for
There's so
disabled.
many that they fill up.
I don't know. I don't roam around the Motorgate, but aren't there spots that are designated for the disabled next to
Yes,
elevators and so forth?
and they can be filled up.
Sure, then we don't overbook the disabled, we overbook people that are not disabled. If that's the main concern. Okay, so let me continue. So I do want to bring up again, why are employees of RIOC and the post office getting free parking? Now, I'm not a fan of it. I believe that every person should pay for parking. And even if it's a symbolic amount, especially when we're talking about raises to the community, it'd be nice if everyone had a stake. So I know that RIOC isn't a crazy fan of that idea, but could we look at it again? And I would love to have a standard price for employees, period. RIOC or not RIOC, I don't think it matters. There is a difference between daytime parking and nighttime parking. So if employees are here just during the day, I can completely understand why the rate would be lower than if you're overnight. But I don't think it's fair for it to be completely free. And two, RIOC owns the island. There's a lot of spots on the island that have parking, including Kohler, and including a lot of places that RIOC controls. There's no reason why we can't allocate employee parking for RIOC employees out of Motorgate if we don't want to charge them anything. Although I think we should charge them. And I'll leave that as an open question because I'm not assuming you're going to answer me right now. And I will move to a question that I think Brian will probably want to be involved in. To the point that Margie said, a few years ago we spent about $10 million on renovating Motorgate, and I know that some of that amount was allocated for renovations of offices. I don't know exactly how much was for offices and how much was for the parking lot. But I do know that we'll want to improve the parking lot over the next few years. Maybe we're going to want to add another floor. Maybe we're going to want to add electric outlets and chargers and so forth. I don't think it's smart as a business that we own 61% of it to distribute revenues on a monthly basis without putting some funds for that time where we're gonna do those large renovations, which I know are gonna come, and they are coming. So from the answers that I got from RIOC so far is that they're limited due to contractual obligations, but I haven't heard more details on that. But when the day comes and we need to spend another $10 million, is your company gonna pay 39% of it? Or could we renegotiate that term to make sure that we put a savings fund and we could invest into this parking lot so it's sustainable for the next 30 years?
Let me just say that, look, everything is open for a discussion. Perhaps other housing companies can get on board, not just, Manhattan Park and RIOC. That's one of the things that Treva can look at as well. But yeah, it would warrant further discussions.
I appreciate that. We can,
Brian, Manhattan Park renovated their park separately from
We did major repairs on our portion of the garage and restriping.
and that's not part of the RIOC.
Right.
That's yours.
That's correct.
That's an
Yes,
addition.
there's Motorgate 1 and Motorgate 2.
I understand that, but it behooves as we own this establishment together that we do renovations together, unless you're saying that first floor is yours and the rest is ours and we're not allowed to go into the first floor. As I'm assuming that's not the case, any renovation really should go through one process and not multiple processes.
I don't disagree, I think it's, what they're getting at is how it's paid for.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the past, I'm talking about the future. I understand. I'm not saying that what was done is wrong. I'm just saying that maybe what we do in the future is even better. So let me move on to the next question. So this is a question that Brian, maybe you know, maybe not. We already have the concept of daytime parking, which more or less means an employee, they're assuming that they're only going to be here for 12 hours. We give them a monthly rate. What happens if they stay longer? What if an employee lives here as well and uses their free parking to leave their car 24/7? Do they have to pay for that?
I
We-
think
we-
that's
That's a good question, I think we'd have to look into that.
I asked this
And
about,
president.
I know, but I asked about this a month ago. My point is that we should have two types of parking. Overnight parking, daytime parking. If you overextend your daytime parking, you should have a fee for it. Overnights can stay overnight, so there should be a difference between overnight and not overnight, and that's another way where you could recoup revenues.
Then we have that, though. We have day rates.
So if you stay overnight, you're gonna pay, you're saying?
If you come on a day pass, and
I'm saying you have a monthly pass as an employee of the island, such
well, then
as,
you have a monthly pass.
such as, Brian, your employees, they have a day parking for $90, I think, or something like that. If they stay overnight, do they pay more?
I think your question is, do employees get a full pass? Yeah.
This is not even an employee, I'm asking, there's a difference between daily, which you guys are confusing with what I'm saying, and monthly. I'm talking about monthly overnight, monthly daytime. So monthly overnight, we all get. Monthly daytime, I'm not sure that we have a very clear picture of what happens if you stay overnight and you have a monthly daytime membership. If that makes sense.
There is no monthly daytime.
We technically do, because all the employees have that, because we're assuming that
The
the
employees
stay
work their
overnight.
hours and they're there during the day. So maybe they're there, from 6 to 6 day, and so within that slot of the day, or maybe their days overlap and we get to split shifts.
Sure, no, so my point is that we should have two sets of membership, because then also people who work in Manhattan. Three, yeah.
A lot of our employees work at night.
No, of course they do.
Okay, of course they do. They pay day or night.
Well, it depends on the structures of the memberships,
That's
right?
right.
And you just have to have multiple structures. But I'm talking about
That's
the.
right. That's
Good.
right.
So what I'm talking about is once you have also a daytime monthly membership, then you open up the door also to employees who work in Manhattan, which is fine if there's a market rate for that, and we have open parking lots, and we can make more revenues off of it. So it's not only about making sure that all the employees are paying at least something, but also opening up the door for other sources of revenue that are not competing with the people that live here.
if, but to that point, and this was not included in the slide deck, right? And you can sort of elucidate this data if you do the numbers yourself, but the biggest category we have is residents, by far. So if the objective here is to increase revenue, you're talking about increasing rates on residents.
No. But let's
Then
get
you're not
to
talking about increasing revenue very much.
it's creating new funnels of revenue, but I'm not gonna.
I think this could be a good discussion with
With the
SP.
management.
Yeah,
company,
absolutely,
and what we
yeah.
can come up with.
Right.
Because there's, I think, about 118 employees of the island.
Right. No, and not only of that, there's employees who work in Manhattan, which I'm sure would love to have daytime parking if they had that option. Knowing that they're not gonna take over the parking lots of the residents overnight. So I wanna ask, and it's kind of like a question, do we have cars that have never left the parking garage, aka that have been sitting in the parking lot for 3 months or 4 months and haven't moved? Because I feel like that if a car isn't being moved, it shouldn't be there, and we should probably give a warning to the owner, and after that, remove the car, because that opens up again space for people that actually use their cars. You do? Yeah, I'm assuming we do. That's what I'm saying, abandoned cars should be removed. My guess is that if a car didn't move in 3 months, you give 2 months, you give a warning, in 3 months, you just get rid of the car. I don't know what's the.
Yeah, we found a bunch of them when we restriked,
That makes sense.
they had to move their cars.
So I feel like that we should open, the people that need parking because they just want to have archive their car. I don't know if that's the place for them, especially if we have a limited amount of space, so it's worth looking into that.
If they're paying for the space, why not? I'm sorry, I have a personal legit to add. When I owned a car, very often I would use it for a couple of months. But when it was Christmas or Easter, it was time to take the kids somewhere, we all get in the car and go. That was the basis on which I kept the car. I didn't have anywhere to use the car. I didn't use it for work. I didn't take it at the store. It was, I think a lot of people are working on cars here. But if you're paying for the space, I can't see how we can discriminate. If they're paying, cars get left here, they have to enforce. But I think you're trying to narrow it down a little too fine. But just narrow it down. I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way, on the question whether employees should pay. That's 100 odd spaces a month. Daytime or full-time, they're not getting paid for. I don't think there's a whole lot of workers who stay here overnight. But if they live here, they should be paid.
No, I agree with you. So, and just picking back on that, if an employee has an employee parking, but is not using the parking, so I feel like we should be monitoring that as well. So if someone has, especially if they're in on the lower tier membership, such as, even if it's someone that lives here, that has a parking permit, but they haven't parked in 3 months, I feel like same applies, that we should open up the door to people that are on the wait list if you're not using your parking. So I feel like maybe if we're a little bit more meticulous over that, maybe we'll open up a few more parking spots as well as part of that process. And then something that I kind of brought I've been bringing up to you, Gerald, for way before, maybe 8 months now. I don't like the idea of going into people's pockets to check what is their income. But I also don't like the idea of someone that, like me, or richer than me, could get a discount from a governmental establishment when I really don't need charity. So I feel like that if we are really in a crunch, it'll be really nice to put some income restrictions on discounts. And I don't mean checking people's paychecks on a monthly basis, but some sort of, even if you say the median income of this area, which I think is $80,000 for a single person or $120,000 for a family, if you make below that, then you get a residential discount. You make above that, then you don't get a residential discount. So that way we open up the door again for more people who are hard-working people that need a parking spot versus people who can afford it and then they can pay that higher fee. And I know it's complicated, but I think it's worth bringing it up because I think it will open up again the door for the people who need it. And last but not least, if someone has a discounted rate, employee or non-employee, and they have 3 cars in a household or 4 cars in a household, I don't think that's equitable as well. So I don't know how many people like that exist. I know some do, but if someone has 3 parking spots they shouldn't get a discount on all 3 parking spots. I feel like that a discount should only be applied to 1 parking spot per household. And that is more or less all I have to say on this matter, because it's not only about increasing rates, it's also about making sure that we have a wait list that's a bit shorter than 2 years. And I think we can make that happen if we make these small adjustments.
Okay, it sounds like we need further discussion with the managing company and another further discussion about how we hold these projects. Really, we anticipate costs in 10 years.
It also requires a order of magnitude increase in our data model.
Yeah, agreed.
Just saying.
Agreed.
Okay, great, so future work. Moving the agenda